as Catherine mentioned, some churches have already been on this journey for a little while, and you're going to be hearing from them this afternoon. And the first church you are going to hear from is Yeovil Community Church, and from Rachel Dyer, who is the community strategic lead there. And they've been running Yeovil for Family with Somerset Council for a number of years now. So welcome, Rachel. Lovely to see you with us today. Over to you to talk to us about what have churches got to offer.
Thank you very much. That's really, really kind welcome from you, and great to be here with you all today. As Paula said, my name is Rachel, and I'm the Community Strategic Lead at Yeovil Community Church, and also the founder of Yeovil for Family, which we run in our church. And our church is a church that's over 100 years old. We're an independent church with Brethren roots and an adult congregation of around about 350 to 450 adults. We're based at the Gateway, which is a community and family hub style space. And we're actually, as you can see from the photograph, we don't look like a traditional church building. We're actually built in a converted car garage and showroom. And we run one of the oldest food banks in the country. We have a job club, we have parent and toddler groups that run on multiple days of the week, youth groups, children's groups, a drop-in for the street community, and a coffee shop that runs 5 days a week, just to name just some of the things that happen out of our building. Our building is run with the aim of loving and serving our community, and that we say that Sunday is our quietest day of the week. And as I said, we also run something called a family support program called Yeovil for Family, and that supports people with multiple and complex needs across South Somerset. That support happens in the family home, as well as through access to some of those activities that we run at the Gateway. And we've more recently started also running some peer support groups as part of that work, which has been really interesting for us. Now, our family support programme, Yeovil Family, was set up in 2011, and at the time was wholly led by volunteers, led and run by volunteers. Well-trained quality people, such as former head teachers, pastoral workers, family support workers, but all volunteers. And just over a year later, we were then delivering the Troubled Families programme across South Somerset under a contract with South Somerset District Council. So as you can imagine, a lot happened in that year. We've had service level agreements with our council ever since, and now support about 200 families at a time with year-long, often intensive support. We work alongside schools, social workers, police, health visitors, GPs, mental health teams, and so on as part of that support. And when we started Yeovil for Family, we wanted to start small and let it grow organically. We didn't want to set up a separate charity to make it happen. I particularly wanted it to sit under our church trust, both from a governance point of view and also for spiritual covering. And this is still the case. Yeovil Community Church is now a CIO, but all of our service level agreements are between the church and the council or church and housing association and so on. So my encouragement to you is it is possible. Also, it's not simply the case that we're on this board or that forum in our community, which we are on lots of boards and forums, but it's more than that. And as Catherine said, it's about relationships, it's about partnerships. So for instance, I'm on the board of something called the Somerset Big Tent, which is an alliance of voluntary sector organisations working in conjunction with Somerset Clinical Commissioning Group, who work together to improve the mental health and emotional well-being of young people in Somerset. As a result of this, I got to know the clinical director of our local primary care network. In turn, this led to more community working together, which led to then our local primary care network approaching us to be the vaccine centre for COVID vaccines. And we've been vaccinating people almost every day since the 18th of December 2020. Now, I don't know the first thing about health. It's not my background, but I do know about people. I know about caring for a hurting community. I know about blessing others with what we've been blessed with. I know about generosity, and I know about hope. And we had a large space that we weren't using for church at the time because church had gone online. So I think what that helped us to do was to sort of open up the doors. What that then led to was us hosting a drop-in vaccine space so that our street community and sex workers could also get the COVID vaccine. This then led to a weekly drop-in for our street community and for those that were without homes, where they can access breakfast, play musical instruments, or play board games, explore creativity, or just sit with a cup of tea. At the same time, they can also see a GP or an occupational therapist or a counsellor, all because we said yes to our space being used for vaccines. So my question to you is, what do you have in your hands? As churches, sometimes we can have many barriers that we might not always realise that we have. For some churches, the desire to get bums on seats can be a big driver to any social action work, or our desire to reach the community. And this can make our public sector colleagues nervous. They might feel that we would take advantage of people's vulnerabilities. And whilst there were some probing questions and at times hostile conversations in steering group meetings with council staff teams, this ultimately wasn't so much of a barrier for us. Our barriers were more along the lines of, will we lose control if we go into a partnership? Will we lose our identity? Will we still be able to pray about which mentors we match with which families? Will it simply be too much work? Will we end up being dictated to by someone else's reporting or data requirements? These are all difficult barriers to get across, and I can't say that they've all been easy to overcome. But for me, whilst the learning curve has sometimes felt like trying to climb Mount Everest without an oxygen tank, whilst wearing flip-flops and a sombrero, it has been hard, and sometimes it seemed impossible. But I know that we are called to love and serve our community. Now, in our family support programme, our vision statement is that by God's Spirit and working in partnership, we want to see the tide of family breakdown turned wherever we serve. And I'll never forget a moment after we'd successfully bid for that Troubled Families contract. And I was in a meeting with some council members of staff to work out an implementation plan. And I felt like there were so many things that we needed to consider, from a risk register to a better computer system than the one that we had, staff recruitment timelines, to name just a few things. And I sat in our coffee shop with one of the council managers thinking, oh, this is all too much. Like, what have we agreed to? And I really felt God say to me really clearly in sort of neon lights. He showed me the word in my mind, the word partnership, neon lights. And I felt God say to me, Rachel, if this isn't partnership, then what is? And that really helped me. It helped us to see the bigger picture of what we were being called into. And in that same meeting, someone from the council said, look, we know that you pray about which mentors you're going to match with which families. So please, can you make sure that you don't write that in your project plan, but keep doing the praying thing, because we know that that's a good thing, but just don't write it down. And I think sometimes we just need to listen to each other and be willing to try to understand each other better. Because what they were effectively saying was that there are things that make things tricky for a council, but that they understand the importance and the value of them. I could have dug my heels in, but what would that have achieved? We absolutely respect that we are meeting people at often their most vulnerable point in their life. So we don't impress our faith on them, but we are ready to give an explanation for why we give up our time to volunteer or why we started the programme in the first place, but only if a family asks. Only if they invite the conversation. We pray for them, but not in their front room. We state that we're a Christian organisation, but we work with all faiths and none. As Christians, we're called to love, not to judge. Our church mission is to live out faith, hope, and love in our community, not so that we get bums on seats, but so that lives are transformed. Whether or not someone makes a commitment of faith isn't a reason for us to support someone. We believe that we're called to feed the hungry, to care for orphans and widows in their distress, to love outrageously. So what do you have in your hands? When I think about how we started, I have to acknowledge that our church has a history of supporting the community, of reaching out to people in difficult circumstances. This didn't happen overnight in 2011. There'd been a food bank in our church for the past 30 years. People have fostered children, volunteered at the night shelter, run fitness groups and choirs, all for our community over many, many years, long before the church even bought the Gateway building. So my invitation to you is to start somewhere, to look at what you have in your hands, your expertise, your resources. Start with a kettle and a toaster if you have to.
1 minute.
And a slice of toast can go a long way to making someone feel safe, cared for, and noticed. Don't focus on all that you don't have. Look at what you do have. So as I sum up here, I think there are 3 things that I would say that we've learned and that are important. The first thing, relationships. Play the long game, invest time in them. Secondly, ask of your council or public sector leaders, what keeps you awake at night? And ask of yourselves, what can we do to help? How can we be part of the solution? And the third thing, understand the unique thing that you bring to your community that your council can't. Remember, none of us have all the answers, but what do you have in your hands? Thank you.